Now you're asking yourself, why am I doing this? This is not what I signed up for. So those thoughts will consume you and eventually turn into stress. And if you don't address it, it's going to lead to some sort of mental shutdown or a burnout situation. It's a stress. You're being isolated, and eventually you're not gonna feel empowered to do the work. There's this term that I've been using, and it covers a lot, which is biohacking. Try to get my body, my mind, or my health back up first. Aikido. Welcome to Start With You podcast, where we deep dive into the journey of self-discovery, personal growth, and finding your purpose. Today, we're tackling a topic that affects so many of us, oftentimes without us even realizing. So, I'll start this off with a question, and hopefully you find out, or maybe it's already on the title. But I have, well, I don't know what the titles of this podcast would be. But going back, the question is, have you ever felt like you're just going through the motions, drained of energy and passion of your work? Maybe you're constantly busy, but no matter how much you do, it feels like you're standing still. You are not alone. Burnout can sneak up on even the most driven and most passionate individuals, leaving you feeling disconnected, unmotivated, and stuck. So, our topic for today is burnout. What is it? And what are the things that you could do to fight it or get past it? Because burnout is something that, again, everybody of us encounters, and one thing is for sure, you've already encountered it, or maybe you are at the earliest stage of a certain burnout, where depending on where you're at. But first, what is burnout? So I pulled up a definition, and this is from WebMD, just so that we have a baseline of what burnout is on its definition, right? So burnout is a form of exhaustion caused by constantly feeling swamped. It happens when we experience too much emotional, physical, and mental fatigue for too long. In many cases, burnout is related to one's job, but burnout can also happen in other areas of life and affects your health. So what that means is burnout happens when it says job. This is the thing that you do on most of your hours in a day. Say for example, if you are an employee, chances are your burnout is related to your 9 to 5 job. If you're a business owner, your burnt out is something has to do with your business, whatever that may be, in the section of marketing, advertising, whatever that may be. So it has something to do where you spend most of your time, because that's the only place where you would have this overwhelming experience. And for me, really, burnout is something to do with stress as well. Because if you're always stressed about something, you know, work life balance, emotional or mental strain, it's a form of stress. So what are the things that leads to this? Before I give my personal take, or I would say my personal opinion about burnouts. So according to this site, you know, I didn't want to reinvent anything. I wanted to get something statistical. So burnout can be caused by excessive workload. As on my example, if you're an employee, maybe you have some unrealistic expectation that you are always and constantly on a certain deadline, and you're always trying to, run towards it without really taking care of yourself. So that leads to long hours of working, and it doesn't give you enough time to do anything else. That's one of the things that could lead to burnout. Another example is um unclear or conflicting expectation depending on the role that you might have. Maybe there are things now that are coming in your plate that wasn't something that was discussed that you're gonna handle. Now you're asking yourself, why am I doing this? This is not what I signed up for. So those thoughts will consume you and eventually turn into stress. And you, if you don't address it, it's going to lead to some sort of mental shutdown or a burnout situation. It could also be another example here is the lack of recognition or support. Obviously, if you're feeling undervalued or you're not getting the guidance or the lack of support from the people that are around you that's supposed to be teaching you how to do the work. So it's a stress. You're being isolated and eventually you're not gonna feel empowered to do the work. So you kind of lose or have that stress build up. Then again, eventually it's gonna lead you to a burnout. Um, so those are just some samples. I don't want to read the entire article here or the entire list here, but you get the gist of it. You already know it. You can search what else could lead to burnout. So it's really a case to case basis, as I mentioned. Burnout 100% can be determined based on what you do or where your attention is for most of the hours of your day. I'm going to just repeat that real quick. But yeah, so the question now is, how do you address that? For me, my personal take, at least in my experience with burnout, because I've encountered that quite a few times with my career. Um, but the major ones or the major reason why I get to a burnout stage in my career is because of the monotony, wherein when there's no more growth, as I mentioned on the definition earlier about being standstill or not progressing. So that's kind of like a mental thing because if you're doing the same thing over and over again and you're no longer thinking about what you're doing, you kind of get that disconnection. So for me, and most of my burnout is because of disconnection on why I'm doing what I'm doing. So it kind of ties back to my first episode of this whole series, right? Understanding why you do what you do. Because just to go back to that topic, because if you have a strong vision statement, right, and you always go back to it and reminds you why you do certain things, the stress or these things that we encounter is not as heavy as they used to be because if you determine the reason why you do it, because you get that, I don't know, kind of motivation from itself. For example, the reason why I'm doing this podcast because I want to give value to people who are also on self help or self discovery in their life and sharing what I've learned, sharing how I think through things might be applicable to you as well. And I wanted to share that. I did that, face to face, but I was asking myself, hmm, what if I what if I create a platform that could potentially reach other people who might be going through the same thing as well? And that is the reason why I'm still recording or doing this content for you guys. But anyway, that's just my reason for doing things, at least one of it from the different areas of our lives, right? So let's go now to, how do you face it head on? How do you counter or bounce back from burnout? The first step that you need to obviously do is identify why. Why do you feel why is this? I'm not gonna say why is this happening, but basically having that self awareness, like really understanding what's the cause. Maybe on the sample earlier, right? Maybe you're not being valued. Maybe you're given an expectation that's above reasonable situation. Once you identify why you're feeling overwhelmed, then you can create a plan, right? But again, when you're on the burnout stage, especially at the peak of it, it's hard to think about, why is it happening, right? Because you're basically consumed by it. And if you're not careful, you might be there on that phase quite long. So, what do I do? What do I suggest that you could do? There's this term that I've been using, and it covers a lot, which is biohacking. What is biohacking? Basically, biohacking is biologically hacking yourself. It could be physical, it could be mental, it could be about your health. So, the first step that I would do on that biohacking is to try to get my body, my mind, or my health back up first. Because, right, if you had a burnout situation, the first thing that would happen to you is your body's gonna feel lethargic. You're basically gonna be weaker or weak. You don't want to move. You don't want to do anything. You self isolate, right? So you have to counter that first. Get your body, your mind, and your health back up. So you're gonna have to have some sort of framework in terms of biohacking. So on our episode 1, where I talk about setting goals and stuff, the first thing you need to do is create a framework for your biohacking. Now, what is that? At least for me, the first thing that I do is physical. Why? Whenever I feel stress and anxiety, I walk. I do some sort of physical activity. I walk, and when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling um, unstable or having like a pre-panic attack or some shit, I take a shower. So you create or position yourself into focusing on something that you could do in that moment. So physical activity was something that I am very passionate about. So every day, as soon as I wake up, or as soon as I have two schedules. One is as soon as I wake up, I go to the gym. But there are situations where I am unable to go to the gym because of work, meetings, and all that. Or maybe I woke up pretty late. I would still work out or go to the gym after shift. So it was a non-negotiable for me because working out creates, what do you call those? Hormones that are positive. I forgot. Dopamine, maybe. So it generates that small wins that, you did something that is for you. You did something that you didn't really want to. Nobody wants to work out really because it's painful, it's tiring. But we know that if we do it, it is better for our body, right? So that's the first physical thing. Now, next is health. Health covers a lot. So we're not going to deep dive to it. But the first thing that I would look at is my sleep patterns. Because when we're both out, sometimes we get insomnia. I don't know if you've had that with a burnout situation, but for me, it happens a lot wherein I'm twisting or, tossing and turning at the bed. Basically creates a unhealthy sleeping rhythm because you have to have a certain schedule when you sleep, right? So I fixed that. I take note when I fall asleep, when I wake up, how much sleep did I actually get for a night. So I monitor those. So I try to identify what I need to do for me to hit that target to regulate my sleep. At some point, just to share a little quick back, I used to sleep like at sunrise, and I have to wake up. Sunrise is around 6, 7 a.m. here in the Philippines, and I have to wake up at like 10 or 9 because of work. So that gave me what? 7, 8, 9, 10. Roughly for only 4 hours of sleep. So it destroys your body. You're basically not even recovered yet from the day before. So it was, you know, it's very messy. So having regulated sleep is kind of like in scope of the whole physical biohacking. But I just put it on health because it sleep impacts a lot in terms of your biological rhythm. I'm not gonna do the details about that, but you can Google it. But sleep has a larger component when it comes to overall health. So having 7 or maybe 6 to 8 hours of sleep, uninterrupted sleep, mind you, is very important. So, um, how do I? How did I did that? I'm not suggesting to do this. I mean, I'm not suggesting this could be your answer to help you regulate your sleep. But there are two things that you can do. One, on a weekend, you absolutely exhaust yourself for one day. Maybe stay up 24 hours so that when you hit Sunday, you basically hit a fast reset. So that on come Sunday night, you could probably sleep at, I don't know, 9 or 10 in the evening, just to get that instant reset to exhaust yourself first, and then reset and find your sweet spot of your sleeping pattern. And another thing is maybe seeking out, what do you call those things that you take? It's not sleeping pills. Is it sleeping pills? Something related to increasing your melatonin production, because melatonin induces sleep. I'm not suggesting you take that. Seek a doctor's advice as well, because I am not certified to recommend any medicinal thing. But if you're struggling with sleep, maybe seek out a physician's assistance if that's something that they could recommend for you to take. Basically, a sleeping pill. Definitely, it will help you create that sleeping schedule. What comes next for the biohacking is the mental framework or your mental health. This one is going to be hard there, because for physical and overall health, those are something that relates to actions, while their mental health is different. At least in my case, there I already follow or have people that I can either watch if they are an online public speaker or personality. There are people maybe in your life that there where you can talk to someone about, what's keeping you at night, what's the reason why you're blown up, what are your complaints, that someone that you could talk to. Those are the two things maybe that could help your mental health. But if those are not available for you, I would suggest reading a good book that's about self growth, something about um what are my books here? Oh, Simon, something related to Simon Sinek, maybe, because he basically created a platform or literally books related to understanding why you do the things that you do. So anything that is kind of like motivational but self growth, or yeah, self growth related books or self help books. Those are essentials, I would say, because a book is always going to be available to you. You could just, if you're feeling shit on a day, just pick it up, read a few chapters, then reflect on the chapter, write about the chapter. Don't just read. For that, just the one thing that I would say: if you're reading a book, don't just read it. Read it, reflect on it, or maybe sometimes write about it, because you have to apply what you learn. Is basically the bottom line why I'm suggesting to reflect and write what you learn on a certain chapter. So those are definitely the tools that you could do. Definitely, there could be a lot more, but those are the few things that I could suggest in terms of biohacking your way for in terms of your physical, your mental, and your health. And there are a lot of things as well in terms of biohacking, which is why it's important for you to have that self-awareness. Let's say you're feeling, I'm gonna give you some sample, right? You're feeling always tired. You're feeling heavy on a day. Maybe you're not, again, maybe you're not sleeping well. You don't feel good. Maybe you need to fix what you eat, right? Eat whole foods. Do not eat fast food. Do not eat processed foods. Those are the kind of like a different ways of biohacking yourself. So you have to understand what it is on that self-awareness type of situation, what's happening in your proximity, then address that. Attack it with the alternative. What's the alternative? What are the opportunities that you could do? Sleep, eat healthy, exercise, things like that. So that's kind of like a gist of biohacking. Maybe we can create a whole episode about biohacking because it's too big. But that's the summary of it. And I'm talking real fast right now. I'm gonna slow down a little bit. But the next is, or another thing that you could do after. I really suggest doing biohacking. So after biohacking, maybe you can rest. Rest is something, I think I covered it already on the health part, right? Rest is something that you should definitely consider when you're feeling burnout. Take a time off, take a week off, take a day off. Just really be in tune to yourself. But don't just go out and have fun and all that, because if you're not gonna recognize or address what's happening to your burnout, then once you come back from that rest, then it's gonna be the same thing, right? So really reflect on things, be in tune with yourself, understand why you're doing it. And then this third one that I would suggest is my favorite thing, and it's something that I kind of created, which is why I live here, is to reevaluate your working environment, or reevaluate or change your environment. Now, my work now after COVID has been about 80% work from home. Before, right, I was on the office. It was 5 days a week. So it's difficult to curate a good flow of your working environment in an office because everything is provided for you: where you sit, where you eat, who you're next to. Oh, those are all predetermined. You don't really have much control on that. But if you are at home, you kind of you can create that. So in my example, right? Um I basically created different stations that has very specific purpose or reason why they're there, because I wanted to create a space where I'm supposed to be working, where I'm supposed to be resting, where I'm supposed to be doing what makes me feel good or fun. So which is why I have this specific corner. Basically, this area is where I do most of my work: content creation, my corporate job, and then the bedroom. Actually, you know what? When the bedroom, or where the bed is, I used to work there as well, and I realized that it was very a bad decision, because it turned out to be more unproductive because of that. So right now, the bedroom, or where the bed is just for sleeping. There's no other activity that I do, maybe. But yeah, there's no other like activity when I am in the bedroom. The bedroom is basically where I just sleep. The living room is where I would play my video games, where I would watch TV, get together with people. The kitchen, where I cook. I used to love cooking. I haven't been cooking as much, but it's just basically everything was curated to have a purpose and very intentional to where I spend my day in, basically. So I created this environment for myself, and obviously, if I felt not in the mood for anything to do anything, I kind of like step back a little bit. It's kind of related to take the time off. I do take sometimes, not always, to take 15-minute breaks on a certain day. I would just go out, take a walk around the property, and just really push out the noise and then come back, work again. You know? So that's why I bought this place. Anyway, enough about that. So creating your work environment, maybe it's your home. And if you are in the place of an office, like the environment can look like this, wherein you can maybe create a culture. You maybe create a habit with your office mate. Um, that could be something that you could do to reevaluate your whole working environment. And obviously, if your working environment in the office is very toxic or very negative, then maybe you're not in the right place. Maybe it's time for you to look for another job or something like that. But having a good, feeling good in a work environment contributes a lot. It affects your physical, it affects your mental framework altogether for sure. All right. What else? What outside of establishing a good work environment? Ah, now that we've covered your physical, taking rest, eventually you would be able to think, because earlier, right, we talked about determining why it is happening, and it's hard to think about it if you're already burnt out. Now, if you have done, the biohacking, taking time off, reevaluating your work environment, it's time now to look at the hard stuff. You need to reassess, your goals, the reason why you're doing what you're doing, whatever that may be for you, and really assess. And then reestablish, why are you on this job? Why am I creating this podcast? Why am I creating this content? Really assess it. Then create some goals around it. Do not create a too big of a leap of a goal. You have the first thing that you need to do is identify what you can do today, what you can do now. Because if the actions that you list for yourself in terms of your goals and your actions, if it's too big, it's gonna be too intimidating for you to execute, and eventually you're gonna be in a situation wherein you're basically reanalyzing and being paralyzed of analyzing, right? So create small steps, things that you can do now, things you can do tomorrow. Expand that list, create a framework, small steps into that goal, and again reestablish why you're doing what you're doing, because everything else follows if you have defined your why. So those are the four steps or the four things that you could do if you are encountering a burnout. We're already 27 minutes in. So to end this podcast or this talk, excuse me, to end this talk, I just wanted to share this quote that I have here on my notes. So, burnout isn't a sign of weakness. It is a reminder that even the strongest fire needs to be rekindled. Take time to rest, to reflect, and reignite your passion. Your best self comes from balance, not burnout. Thank you for listening. And again, if there are topics related to work, maybe a little bit finance, careers, things of that nature that you would like me to expand, feel free to comment them down on the comment section in Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you might be watching this. Feel free to comment that. And I'll see you soon. Or I'll see you next week or to the next episode. Bye.